They built 26 homes on my mountain, without permission, without safety, without a single care. And when the mountain finally gave way, they pointed at me and said it's your fault. But here's what they didn't know. I warned them. I documented every lie, every bribe, every illegal bulldozer that tore this land apart. And when the truth came crashing down, I made sure everyone saw it. Real justice moments like this remind us that truth always finds its way to light. So before we dive into the full story, drop your city or country name in the comments. I want to see how far this message travels. And if you believe in justice over power, hit that like button and subscribe, because this channel stands for stories that speak truth to power. After the chaos of that landslide, people kept asking how something like this could happen. But the truth started years earlier, when a quiet man named Ethan Ward bought a stretch of mountain land that overlooked his small town. It wasn't just property to him, it was legacy. His father had taught him to respect the mountain, to never carve more than the earth could hold. For years, Ethan lived simply, restoring the land, planting trees, and renting a few acres to hikers. Then one spring morning, representatives from a new homeowners association showed up with polished shoes and confident smiles. They called themselves the Summit Community Project. Their plan? Build an eco-friendly housing community of 10 homes on the lower slope, sustainable, green, a model for responsible development. Ethan hesitated. He didn't trust developers, but the HOA president, Richard Collins, convinced him it was for a good cause. They promised to respect property lines and follow every environmental guideline. Ethan agreed to lease a small portion, under clear legal conditions that no permanent foundation would be built beyond the survey marks. But months later, he noticed heavy machines moving higher up, past the agreed line. Bulldozers clearing trees, trucks laying deep concrete foundations where the soil was softest. Ethan drove up to confront them, but the foreman just smirked. Orders from the HOA, sir. You'll have to take it up with them. He did. Ethan filed complaints, sent emails, called county inspectors. No one listened. The HOA had influence. Richard Collins was friends with a city official. The permits kept getting revised, and soon, 10 homes turned into 26. The once green mountain now looked like an open wound, terraces cut deep, drainage channels clogged with concrete dust. Ethan stood at his fence line, watching water pool where roots once held firm. He warned them. You can't fight gravity, he said. This land won't hold under a storm. But they laughed, called him dramatic, called him the paranoid landowner. When small landslides began near one of the new driveways, they simply paved over the cracks. HOA newsletters bragged about the success of Summit Heights, selling million-dollar views built on unstable soil. But Ethan kept his records. Photos. Videos. Emails. Soil readings. Everything. He didn't know when, but he knew, someday, the mountain would speak for itself. He just didn't realize how soon that day would come. It started with the rain. Not a storm, at least not at first. Just a slow, steady drizzle that lasted for days. The kind of rain that seeps into roots and whispers to the soil. But on that mountain, there were no roots left to hold the ground. Ethan stood by his cabin window, watching rivulets of brown water snake down the hill. By nightfall, the rain had turned heavy, hammering against the tin roof. Then came the first sound, a low, cracking groan that rolled through the valley like thunder. He grabbed his flashlight and ran outside. What he saw made his stomach drop. The slope above the new homes was moving. Not fast, but steady, the earth itself sliding. Retaining walls snapping like matchsticks. Within minutes, the first house tilted, then another. The entire mountainside began to fold in on itself. Emergency sirens pierced the rain as families screamed and fled their homes. It was chaos, mud, debris, flashing lights, broken glass. Ethan called the fire department, then stood helpless, watching everything he'd warned about become reality. By dawn, half the Summit Heights community was gone, buried in mud and concrete. The mountain was silent again. But the real disaster hadn't even started yet. 2 days later, Ethan's phone rang. It wasn't the county or the insurance adjusters. It was Richard Collins, the HOA president. His voice was cold. "You'll be hearing from our lawyers," he said. "Our engineers traced the collapse to your old retaining wall. This is on you." Ethan froze. His retaining wall? The one built 20 years ago, hundreds of feet away from their illegal excavation zone? It made no sense. But within a week, local news headlines were everywhere. Homeowners' negligence blamed for deadly mountain collapse. Private landowner responsible for HOA destruction. Reporters swarmed his property. HOA members gave interviews, crying on camera about trusting the landowner. Ethan's name was plastered across every broadcast. It was a setup. He knew it. But proving it would be like shouting into the wind. The HOA had lawyers, money, influence. He had evidence, but no one wanted to listen. Not yet. So he gathered everything. Drone clips from the early excavation. Soil samples. Copies of his warning emails. Every signed permit he'd received before they altered them. Ethan turned his small cabin into a war room. They wanted to bury him under blame. But as he stared at those photos of broken homes, cracked soil, and the smug face of Richard Collins, Ethan made a quiet promise to himself. If they want a fight, they'll get one. But this time, I'm not the one who's going down. Ethan didn't sleep for days. While the HOA's lawyers flooded him with threats, he was busy turning every inch of his land into evidence. He mapped the slope, photographed soil cracks, and compared rainfall data. Still, he needed proof that no court could twist. That's when he found it, a flash drive buried in a box of old documents from the construction company's site manager. It held drone footage from before the collapse, clear as day, showing excavators digging far beyond the permitted line. You could even hear a voice say, "Richard wants this done fast, inspectors won't climb this high anyway." Ethan hired an independent geotechnical engineer, someone the HOA couldn't control. The expert's report was damning. The slide wasn't caused by Ethan's wall, it was triggered by illegal grading and ignored drainage systems. When Ethan sent the report to the county office, they tried to bury it. But this time, he didn't wait for them. He went public. Posted every photo, every document, and the drone video online. Within 24 hours, the footage exploded. News channels picked it up. The narrative flipped overnight, from reckless landowner to HOA corruption cover-up. And when reporters showed up at Richard Collins's mansion, he didn't have a statement. For the first time, he looked nervous. Ethan knew then, the mountain wasn't done speaking. But now, the whole world was finally listening. The courtroom was packed, reporters in the back, cameras flashing every few seconds, and the HOA board sitting together like a wall of expensive suits. Ethan sat alone at the plaintiff's table, calm but unshaken. For the first time in months, he wasn't defending himself, he was defending the truth. When the judge entered, the air turned heavy. Ethan's lawyer presented the drone footage first, the one showing excavators digging beyond the legal boundary. The video echoed through the courtroom. "Richard wants this done fast, inspectors won't climb this high anyway." Murmurs spread across the audience. Richard Collins's expression cracked for the first time. Then came the geotechnical engineer, a soft-spoken expert who laid out the science: illegal excavation, destroyed root systems, blocked drainage. He ended with one line that silenced the room. This wasn't an act of nature. This was an act of negligence. The HOA's attorney tried to shift blame, showing old photos of Ethan's retaining wall. But when Ethan took the stand, his quiet composure carried more weight than any document. "I warned them," he said. "Not once, not twice, but 7 times. They told me I was just a landowner, not an engineer. Maybe so. But I know my land. And I know when someone's lying to it." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Collins, is it true you authorized grading beyond the permitted limits?" Richard stuttered. His lawyers tried to object, but the judge cut them off. Then came the final blow. County emails revealed they had falsified inspection reports under HOA pressure. The verdict came down swift and loud. The HOA was found liable for the collapse and environmental destruction. Fines in the millions. Developer licenses revoked. Ethan didn't celebrate. He simply walked outside, looked up at the mountain, and smiled faintly. Reporters surrounded him, asking how it felt to win. He answered softly. They tried to bury me under their lies. Instead, they buried themselves. Justice isn't loud, it's patient. Months after the verdict, the mountain was quiet again. The heavy machines were gone. The ruined homes had been cleared, leaving only grass and new saplings growing through the soil. Where destruction once stood, life was returning, slowly, but steadily. Ethan rebuilt his small cabin on a higher ridge, overlooking the valley. From there, he could see the land healing, roots finding their place again, rainwater flowing clean through natural channels. Sometimes he'd stand there in silence, remembering the noise, the blame, the headlines, and how truth had cut through it all like sunlight through fog. People from nearby towns began visiting him, calling him the man who took on the HOA. But Ethan never saw himself as a hero. I didn't fight them to win, he'd tell them. I fought because the land couldn't speak for itself. He started a small environmental foundation in his father's name, one that taught local builders how to work with the land, not against it. For him, that was the real victory. As the camera pans out, the mountain stands tall once again, green, alive, and quiet. And Ethan's final words echo softly. Land doesn't belong to whoever builds on it first. It belongs to whoever respects it most.